Wow. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today's little chat. Somewhere. Is Sia, Hugh, and Hika. The children of Atum. In the Heliopolis tradition, Shu and Tefnut mate, producing Geb and Nut. Geb represents physical reality, the earth, and the material world. Nut is the sky goddess, whose body is seen as the starry heavens. Nut is the barrier that separates noon or none from the manifest universe. She is depicted throughout Egyptian history as either a cow with gold stars on her belly, or a beautiful naked woman stretched out over the night sky. One of the symbolic images recurrent in Egyptian religion is that of the sun god being swallowed each evening by Nut, only to be rejuvenated and made young in her womb in order that he may be born each morning. The creation myth continues by explaining that Nut and Geb were deeply in love, so much so that they remained locked in a sensual embrace for ages. As a result, there was no space for anything else to live or grow. Ra, Atum, ordered Shu, the nether of air and void, to separate the two lovers. With Geb under his feet, Shu lifted Nut's arching body high into the sky. Nut was pregnant. Ra-Atum declared that Nut may not give birth to any of the 360 days in the civil calendar year. In the meantime, Dehudi, Toth in Greek, the nether of wisdom and writing, or Shishak, had been observing that situation. They took pity on Nut. So by gambling with the moon, Tahuti won 5 extra days in the year, which became the 5 independent days that occur annually between the previous year's civil calendar and the newer civil calendar. On each of these 5 days, Nut gave birth to a different child. The brief involvement of Tahuti, Toth, at this point in the myth may seem odd. However, in reality, it is a significant clue to the understanding of the spiritual nature of the Netherus, who were born to Nut. For it is important to understand that Dehudi or Toth is a lunar god. This part of the myth is clearly a reference to the difference between the civil calendar that is concerned more with mundane affairs and the lunar calendar that is set aside for the time of religious festivals. Ra-Atum's refusal to allow the birth of the gods during the civil calendar attest to their spiritual nature, for only with the lunar or religious calendar can they come into being. With this event, Osiris, Heru-Ur or Horus the Elder, Sutek or Set, Aset or Isis, and Nephhet or Nephthys were born. In this myth, the forces that brought the universe into manifestation are represented by the Neteru, embodied as the Nun, Ra-Atum, Lunar, Nebet, Hepetet, Hathor, Shu, and Tefnut. From there, a transition occurred in which Nut and Geb act as the channel through which the divine becomes manifest in the material world. Their children are the quintessence of the cycles of life, death, and rebirth in the universe following the original act of Atum's becoming. As other myth tells us also about Ra's journey across Nut's back. Ra is the sun god, and his journey across Nut's back is the path taken by the sun across the sky. The sun represented light and dark, hot and cold, life and death, and defined the cardinal points of the compass: north, south, east, west. And when it came up in the morning, the deep dark was banished and light was cast over the land of Egypt. We should not be surprised that so many ancient people worshiped the sun. Its appearance every morning represented the victory of day over night, life over death, good over evil. But why did the ancient Egyptians believe that the sun was swallowed by a giant woman who later gave birth to him? The story of Ra and Nut is not just a description of the daily journey of the sun. It is also a clever way of representing the position of the sun in the sky at different times of the year. For the Egyptians, Nut represented the Milky Way. Strangely enough, this hazy spread of stars does appear to bear the shape of a woman arching her back over the horizon. Next, the Egyptian astronomers realized that at the spring equinox, the sun rose to a point corresponding to Nut's mouth and moved over the next 9 months through her body to be born 9 months after the equinox, at a point corresponding to her birth canal. For the Egyptians, this period of 9 months was self-evidently the period of gestation of a human being. Added to the fact was their belief that a woman conceives through her mouth, and suddenly the myth of Ra and Nut makes a lot of sense. The myth of Ra and Nut then helped the Egyptians mark 2 points in their year: the vernal equinox and the mid-winter solstice. But decoding the myth raises further questions. Why did they want to mark these points of the year? And why did they worship the objects in the sky as goddesses? With the ancient Egyptians, we see for the first time the idea of a heaven in the skies. And this heaven was populated by a bizarre collection of gods and goddesses that they associated with the stars and planets. When they looked at the planet Mercury, which we now call Venus, the Egyptians imagined the god Set, the evil god of chaos and destruction. Erroneously, when they observed the planet Venus, which is really Mercury, they thought of Isis, the lovely goddess of fertility. And when they looked upon red Mars, they imagined they were charting the progress of angry Horus, the falcon-headed son of Isis. This myth explains in highly symbolic terms the origins of the physical universe. It describes the energies that make up the essence of spiritual reality, the principle of polarity with the dynamic interplay that occurs in the creation of life, whether on a physical or spiritual level, are represented throughout. Deep wisdom can be found in this myth if carefully considered. Sia, Hu, or Su, and Hika in the creation myths are 3 elements and are viewed as being essential before creation could begin. Sia, Hu, and Hika. These 3 were seen as Neteru and as spiritual attributes, the creator gods. The kings and priesthood of Egypt were thought of as possessing these divine powers. The term Sia literally means sign of recognition. It is the ability to perceive the true meaning behind things and events. Sia is innate knowledge and intuition, intelligence, and the ability to identify things beyond oneself. It represents sublime knowledge. Sia is the sublime personification of the power of perception or understanding. In all the creation myths, the sublime absolute becomes aware of itself and its condition through Sia. The Egyptians felt that the Pharaoh and the priesthood acting in the place of the Pharaoh in one ritual had a measure of this perception. The awareness brought about through Sia formed an essential part of ancient Egyptian magic and ritual. Sia is frequently paired with Hu, the personification of authoritative speech. But Sia and Hu are not simply these powers in the abstract, but are in the first place the understanding and speech of Ra, as Ra gives form to the cosmos at the beginning of time and anew each and every day. In the Book of the Dead, spell 17, it is said that Ra cut his penis, and Sia and Hu came into being from the drops of blood he shed. So now we can kind of correlate that with, Uranus' penis causing the foam from which Aphrodite emerged. But, you have to see it esoterically and not literally. Sia and Hu are Ra's. Sia and Hu are Ra's constant companions aboard the vessel in which he traverses the sky. Hu represents sublime utterance. It is the ability to make manifest through the spoken word. As such, Hu is thought or will made real through the voice. This term also carries with it the added meaning of abundance and plenitude. Hu is the creative will of the manifested. Hu is the manifesting will of the manifesting goddess directed toward plenitude that expressed itself in words. The use of the voice for manifesting and ritualistic purposes is a vital part of ancient Egyptian religion and magic. Hu also shows us that when one can verbalize a thought or idea, expressing this through the use of symbols, as all language, written or spoken, is a set of symbols joined to express meaning, those thoughts now become real. By speaking or writing, they are put into a form that can be communicated to others and thus worked upon. A spiritual connection with vision is implied by this statement that images on the walls of the Egyptian temples had been beautifully executed in accordance with the glorious words of Sia, which also indicate that the aesthetic canons of Egyptian art were understood to derive ultimately from Sia. Sometimes the images themselves were characteristic as the words of Sia. In this way of thinking, it is vital to verbalize thoughts and feelings in order to get them out and make them real. Until this is done, they have no form and thus cannot be worked with. This is the power of Hu, and it is for this reason that for the Egyptians, he represented authoritative utterance, i.e., command and manifestation by sublime or royal decree. The third element essential to all manifestation myth is Hika. This is the term used for magic or sublime energy. It is considered to be life energy and the force of magic itself. In the Egyptian system, the entire universe is believed to be filled with this energy, filled with the force that is vital to magic. Hika is identified with the primordial speech of Atum when she was yet alone at the very moment in which the differentiated cosmos began to emerge, and as the ongoing protection of that which Atum has commanded. Hika is thus at once the means by which the cosmos comes forth, as well as the means of its maintenance and preservation. Hika says, I am. If she wishes, she does. The mother of the goddess. The effective will being essential to the nature of a goddess. Hika here identifies herself as the sun or the light of her who bore Atum, thus placing herself prior even to the oldest among the goddess, who was born without a mother. This paradox expresses that Hika is essential to the nature of the goddess and is therefore, in a sense, prior to emanations. The word Hika contains as its principal component the word Ka. The relationship between Hika and Ka is underscored in Hika styling herself greatest of the owners of Kas, or as I say in my philosophy and my understanding, risen star, the Karais, the heir of Atum. The word Ka, which is frequently translated either as spirit or as double, and the Ka of an individual is sometimes depicted as their twin. Ka is the force of vitality or of will in the individual, while Hika is the instrumentalization of that force. Although to go to one's Ka means to die, which I don't agree with. To go to one's Ka is to, you would die to your ego, because your ego, your Ka, is what you're raising. It's the spirit. One's Ka is what supports one all through life as well as beyond. Food offerings for the dead were directed to their Kas, just as offerings to the goddess were directed to their Kas, since the Ka is the source of sustenance and vitality. Hika, in some sense, is the primary activity, the mobilization of vital energy as a movement of will prior to all other modes of activity. One's Ka is both one's innate nature and also the best that one can be. And Hika manifests the striving to actualize the potential of one's Ka. The Ka can also be understood as one's luck or fortune. So here we can say the Ka is Lakshmi. and Hika as the effort to affect this element of destiny, or to deploy it as an effective force in the moment, in the now. The presence of this vital power in all of creation is reflected. The consistent use of ritual magic in the temples and as spellcraft on the part of the common people. So we have that all three of these are vital to the creation, to the manifestation of the universe, in that the emanating being becomes aware through Sia. The universe then comes into being through Hu. The will of the sublime made manifest through the word. This spoken word, then, is filled with Hika, the sublime life force. We can see it in this way. The emanating goddess has at her disposal three special powers that help her to plan and execute her work of manifestation. Sia, percipience in planning the work. Hu, the manifested utterance. Hika, the magic that brings the world into being out of the manifested word. Sia is the divine personification of the power of perception and understanding, and is frequently paired with Hu, the personification of authoritative speech. But Sia and Hu are not simply these powers in the abstract, but are in the first place the understanding and speech of Ra. As Ra gives form to the cosmos at the beginning of time and anew each and every day, Hu is not merely utterance, but utterance in accord with truth, and hence authoritative and effective, and thus similar to Hika, the power of magically effective utterance. Sia is not merely perception, but accurate perception, which is inseparable from understanding. A special connection with vision is implied by the statement that images on the walls of the Dendera temple have been beautifully executed in accordance with the glorious words of Sia, which also indicates that the aesthetic canons of Egyptian art were understood to derive ultimately from Sia. Sometimes the images themselves were characterized as the words of Sia. Perception is understood as a kind of assimilation, as shown by the characterization of Sia as the great swallower. In the pyramid text, Utterance 250, Sia, who is announcing to the king of the gods, characterizes herself as she who is in charge of wisdom, who bears the goddess's book, who is at the right hand of Ra. The deceased king proceeds to identify oneself with Sia. In the pyramid text, Utterance 255, the concepts of Sia and Hu are paired. I have assumed authority, Hu, and have power through understanding, Sia. While in Utterance 257, it is said that the king assumes authority, Hu. Eternity is brought to him, and understanding, Sia, is established at her feet for him. In the coffin text, one encounters the affirmation, I know what Sia knows, and a path is open for me, and I am the Lord of Air. And I take that to mean I am the rightful heir. In the coffin text spelled 237, in which the pervasiveness of air seems to symbolize the all-knowingness of Sia. Another way of confirming command of the faculty of understanding is, I know what Sia did. In the coffin text spelled 241, Sia and you are also linked with Shu, insofar as they both emanate from the primordial goddess Atum, albeit in different senses. Thus, in the coffin text spelled 321, the operator states of Atum, or the deceased here identified with Atum, that one's utterance is what goes forth from one's own heart. One has gone round in the company of Shu upon the circuit of Hu and Sia, who made inquiry from him. Hu and Sia then say to Atum, but hence also to the deceased, in regard to a certain winding path in the netherworld. Come, let us go and make the names of yonder winding in accordance with what went out from his heart of him who once went round with Shu, for he is his son who fashioned himself. Thus it seems that the winding path is to take on the name and hence the shape of the prior understanding of which the deceased as a son who fashioned himself partakes. Sia can also be cast as the narrator of mythic events, such as coffin spelled 335, in which a fragment of myth about the great cat identified with Ra and his actions in a war between the followers of Ra and forces of chaos is attributed to Sia. What is that great cat? And we know cat is the carbon body. He is Ra himself. He was called Cat when Sia spoke about him. He was cat-like in what he did, and that is how his name of Cat came into being. This explanatory passage makes it seem as though the importance of attributing a name of speech to Sia is that the name is in accord with vertical perception, as opposed not only to false perception, but also to possible sources of naming other than direct perceptual acquaintance. In coffin spell 816, Sia speaks to the deceased as a result of the opening of the mouth ceremony. I have seen Sia, and she opens my mouth and tells a true matter to the Lord of all, Atum. Coffin spell 958 is to become Sia, who belongs to Ra. That is the power of perception, which belongs to Ra, but it is brief and fragmentary. Similar, more informative is coffin spell 1006, Sia in the midst of the Eye of Ra, in which the operator, identifying with Sia, affirms that I will go up that I may give you, Ra, your plume. I have gone down that I may create Hu, or manifest Hu, indicating the mediating role of Sia, that is perception, through intelligence, which is Ra, and utterance, which is Hu, and that a god may be diverted by a god, perhaps referring to the ability through knowledge and authoritative utterance, Sia and Hu, to divert an adverse destiny. Sia states here that she is the image of Ra in the midst of Ra's shrine, and tells Ra that he has duplicated your soul for your power. I am she who satisfies, and it is your wand which does it again, which repeats. The reference here to duplication and repetition seem to refer to the alignment of the operator's power of perception with the sublime perception of Ra as its double or repetition, which benefits not only the operator but Ra too, and hence the cosmos itself, for it makes of the operator the executor or agent, like Ert or I of Ra's will in the world. Hence, Sia, the operator, goes on to urge Ra to guard this power of mine. Give me air, and I will give you what is in the offering. As for him who helps me, I will help him. The coffin text, spell 1143, refers to Sia as being in the eye of Ptah, indicating a similar relationship between the power of perception, understanding, and the demiurgic activity, such as that as the divine craftsman Ptah. As we honor the loving energy that we call Sia, it's just such a blessing to have, Sia, or understanding. That sweet understanding, and to use your living experience, your voice, your utterances in that service, to use your time and space to honor the glorious beauty that is your inner self and bring it out into your reality, to be made flesh, to be made ultimate reality, is the greatest expression that you can say that you've done with your time as being a human. And I know we're telling God this, God is that, and that is not my debate. That's not for me to say. But from my perspective, from what my inner truth has allowed for me to express, she taught me the goddess of love is my inner being, and I am queen of heaven, and as an embodied being, the goddess of love is the unmanifest, and I am queen of heaven as the manifested aspect. And it's just such a great privilege and honor to walk in that uprightness and to speak with authority that the channel universe has chosen these lips this time. The unicorn to give honor and praise through my songs and through my messages. That's the only worthy, honorable gift you give yourself as being a manifested entity, as being a sublime, loving, deeply rooted energy. And it is such a great honor. It's such a great honor to be that. It is such a great privilege to be that, and only that. Namaste.